Okay, number 17 is asking us to graph each exponential function and identify the following. So I'm not going to actually graph it on the graph paper right here, guys. Let's just go to the calculator and do everything over there, okay? Okay, so I'm at the calculator. I want to go to a new document. I save nothing ever, and I want to add a graph. So on the first one, the equation was 1/2 raised to the x power. So I'm going to put 1/2 and then raised to the x power. Okay, so it asked me a couple of questions. The first question was to identify the x and y intercepts. So if I look at my graph, I can see that I definitely have a y-intercept, but I will not have an x-intercept because this never will cross the x-axis. So I just have a y, which is going to be 0, 1. And then the second one was asking if it was increasing or decreasing. So if we read our graph from left to right, just like we normally read a book, I can see that this is going down. So that is going to be decreasing. And the last one was our asymptote. So our asymptote is that imaginary line that my graph is approaching. And again, a little hard to see on here, but it is getting very close to my x-axis, but it's not crossing it. But it does create a horizontal line, which means it's going to be y equals, and it is crossing at 0, so y equals 0. So there's the first one in number 17. Okay, so let's go do the second one. I'm just going to add a new page. So Control Doc to add a page. Again, I add a graph. And my next equation was 2 parentheses 1.5, close my parentheses, raise that to the x power, and then hit enter. So again, let's see what we can identify. The first thing is the x or the y intercepts. So I can see again I have a y-intercept, but I'm not having an x. So again, it will be a 0, comma, and this is at 2, so 0, 2. My second thing is asking if it's increasing or decreasing. Again, if I read from left to right, you guys, look how this is going. And it's going up, right? So this is going to be increasing. And then number 3, again, is asking for the asymptote. Again, that's that imaginary line that the graph is approaching. Again, it's the x-axis. But because it's a horizontal line, it will be y equals, and it's crossing the y at 0, so y equals 0. Okay, let's look at number 18. It is asking me to find the x-intercept, solutions, factors, vertex, and the y values for the given x values of the equation y equals x squared plus 5x minus 24. It says then sketch the graph and find the axis of symmetry. Okay, so I'm not going to actually sketch the graph just like on number 17. I'm just going to go straight to the calculator and we'll do everything and answer all the questions over there. Okay, again, I want a new page, so Control Doc to add a page, number 2 to add a graph. So my first equation was x squared plus 5x minus 24, and I graph. Okay, so first thing I want to do is get rid of this because I think it's going to be in my way. Okay, now that I've moved it, the first thing I want to do is find my x-intercepts. So I'm going to let the calculator tell me everything, even though sometimes I can see exactly what they are, but I'm going to let the calculator do all the work. So I'm going to go to Menu, and I want to go to number 6 to analyze a graph. And then remember that for the x-intercepts, we had several names. We could say x-intercept, we could say root, we could say 0, we could say solution. It all means the same. So I'm looking for number 1, which would be the zeros. So notice you get this dashed line. So if I move this dashed line to the left of my x-intercept that I'm trying to find, then I will hit enter. Then I'll move it to the right and hit enter. And so there's my first 0, is at -8, 0. Now I have another one down here, right? So we got to do it again. So that means Menu, 6, 1. Again, there's my dashed line. So let's move it to the left of my x-intercept that I'm trying to find and hit enter. Then I'll move it to the right and hit enter. And again, there it is. So we can write that And it's going to be then for number 1, we were finding the x-intercept. So I have -8, 0, and then I have 3, 0. Now the second thing was asking for the solutions. So really the solutions, they're only asking for the x values, but you need to make sure to put them in the braces, not the parentheses, because that means that would be a point, which we know my -8 and my +3 are actually 2 separate points, okay? So make sure you put them in the braces. The next thing they're asking for factors. We're going to do that last, so let's keep on going. We want the vertex now. Again, I'm going to let my calculator do all the work for me. So again, we're going to go to menu. Again, I'm going to go to 6. And this time, instead of the 0, I either need a minimum or a maximum. And so because my graph is opening up, that means I have a minimum. So I'm going to do number 2 for minimum. And there's my dashed line again. I just need to make sure this dashed line is somewhere between, on the left-hand side of my vertex. And I know I can't see it, but really, guys, you probably can imagine my vertex is down here somewhere at the bottom of this line, So I'm going to make sure it's to the left of that point somewhere. So I'm safe here, and then we can hit enter. Again, do the same thing to the right of where we think our vertex would be and hit enter. And then the graph makes the adjustment, and then we can write down the vertex. So it is at -2.5, and then a -30.3. And then the fifth thing was asking for the axis of symmetry. So we know it's always an x equals, and it's always the x value of my vertex. So a -2.5. And then they also are wanting us to fill in this little data table where they're asking if the x value is -7, what's the y? Or if the x value is 4, what's the y? So again, let's let our calculator do the work for us. We're just going to go to table. So if I go to Control T, that'll take us to the table. Right away, here's 4, so that means my y is 12. So let me go ahead and write that. And then if I move it up so that I can get -7 on my x side of that table, there's -7, so my y is going to be a -10. So again, let's write that. -10. Okay. Now the only other thing we have to do is find the factors. So I'm going to do Control T to get rid of the table so we have a little more space. There we go. Okay, so let's look at what my problem was. Remember, it was the x squared plus 5x minus 24. So I know it's a trinomial with no lead, so I can put my 2 sets of parentheses. I will put my x and my x. Then we're going to factor 24. So I've got the factors of 24 listed right here. I've got 1 times 24 and 2 times 12 and 3 times 8 and 4 times 6. And then I'm adding my factors, and then I will subtract my factors. I will add and I will subtract. I will add and I will subtract. And then I will add and I will subtract. And I am looking for my middle term of 5. I found it right here. That means I'm using 3 and 8. And this means my signs are going to be different. So I'll put my 3 and my 8 in here. And since they're different, this sign goes with the larger of the two numbers. 8 is larger, so it gets the plus, and 3 gets the minus. So my factors are going to be x minus 3 and then x plus 8. Okay, done with number 18. Let's go on and do 19. It's going to be the very same steps. Okay, so 19, since we're going to do the same thing, I'm not even flipping back over to my paper. I'm just going to go ahead and stay at my calculator. I'm going to add a new document. So Control Doc to add a new page. Sorry, fingers. Okay, menu, and then I want number 2. All right, so now I'm going to have x squared, and then plus 4x, and then minus 21, and hit enter. All right, so first of all, let's start with moving this. See if I can do it this time. There we go. All right, and then I need my 2 x-intercepts, right? So I'm going to practice letting my calculator do it for me. So I need to go to menu, and then 6, and remember 0 means x-intercept. There's my dashed line. Just have it to the left of that first one. Hit enter. move it to the right, and then hit enter, and there's my first one. Let's do it again. Menu 6-1, dash line to the left, enter, move it to the right, enter, and there's my second one. So if I write this, number 1 is going to be a -7, 0, and also a +3, 0. Then remember, the second thing is asking me for the solutions. So the solutions really will just be my x values put inside a pair of braces, not parentheses. Number 3 is asking for the factor, so I'm skipping that. I'll go to number 4 and find the vertex. So again, we're doing the same thing we just did. So I'm going to go to menu and 6. But instead of the zeros, I either need a minimum or a maximum. Again, it is opening up, so that means I need a minimum, so that's number 2. And I have my dashed line. It'll be to the left of where I think the vertex would be, and then we'll move it to the right of where I think the vertex will be, and then it makes that adjustment for me. So my vertex is going to be a -2, and then a -25. Then number 5 was, of course, the axis of symmetry. So x is going to equal whatever my x value is, which is -2. And then I also have that little data table where my x is a -6 or a +4. So we need to figure out what that's going to be. So let's go to the table. So I'm going to do Control T. And 4 is going to be 11. So let me write that. And then I need to figure out, I need to move this up, I need to move this up until I get to -6. There we go. -6, then my y would be a -9. So let me write that. And then the last thing I need to do are find the factors. So again, I'm going to do Control T to get rid of my table. And then let's factor. So my equation was x squared plus 4x minus 21. Again, I have a trinomial with no lead, so I can put my 2 x's. I'm factoring 21. Again, I'll put that right down here. So I have 1 times 21 and 3 times 7. If I add or subtract, and then add or subtract. And I am looking for my middle term of 4. I found it right here. That means I'll use the 3 and the 7, and this means my signs are different. So I will put the 3 and the 7. Again, signs are different. This one goes with the larger, so that means 7 gets plus and 3 gets the minus. So I'll have x minus 3 times x plus 7. All right, I think that's it.